Retro Studios in Texas has produced some great Metroid titles. But when they said they were ready for something new, we asked them to take one of the most treasured franchises in video game history and to make it magic again. If you listen, you can hear it coming.
This trailer has to be the greatest of all time. After 14 years, there was another Donkey Kong Country. While Rare were busy sucking ass at Microsoft, Nintendo ignored it. They made Jungle Beat, which is awesome by the way, however it's not the same. Along comes Retro Studios to revive the best gorilla ass-kicking simulator. They even added the word returns. You can't get a more obvious title than that. It was like, he's back bitches! Many people were happy because Metroid Prime and its following sequels had been well received. I didn't care too much about their past works, but I was like, oh my gosh, a new Donkey Kong game. Oh yeah, I got a review to do. The story goes that a giant statue appears out of here and spawns a bunch of tickies who become your new enemies. They then brainwash the animals to steal your bananas. Diddy and Donkey Kong aren't too happy about that. Since their powers don't work on you, the first thing you do is beat the crap out of one by shaking the Wiimote. Short and simple, but most importantly, skippable. It's a very similar story to the first game. I was surprised that there was no more King K. Rool and his Kremlins. To me it's like having Mario without Bowser and his Goombas. The tickies are okay, but they'll never be as iconic. They lack that humour and toughness. The levels are Donkey Kong Country through and through. Most apply this structure. They introduce you to a new idea, then they keep reusing it, but in gradually more difficult ways. Then, combine it with objects used previously, like bouncy tyres, vines, electro balls and grippy moss. There are more puzzly moments where you stay at a single screen for longer. However, most of the time, this doesn't add or take away from anything. On occasions, I felt like it was a little too slow. In 3 of the factory stages, there's a hidden button you need to find in order to power up this rocket. It was a cool concept, but once again, it doesn't add a whole lot, but at least it wasn't that intrusive. The ground pound, which was a complete afterthought in the original, and which was only for finding some secret bananas, is now required to progress. You can stun enemies with it, and it's handy against some boss fights. You also have a blow move. It's useful against those fire tickies. Once again, it doesn't add much or take away. Diddy Kong is now a power-up, and I do say, a very good power-up. You get 2 extra hit points, a hover and an infinite roll. The Puritan in me just wanted to play as Donkey Kong to get the feel of the originals, because you have 2 hit points and you don't have that hover ability, which makes platforming easier. However, the platforming has been designed with him in mind. Trust me, it's a lot more fun to play the way intended, though there'll still be plenty of moments to be just DK because of deaths and whatnot. If you really want to control Diddy, you can only do so in co-op. There's more interactivity. Most platforms move when you jump on them and have other things like water influencing their direction. I find this stuff to be really cool. I'm sure no one would care if it didn't work like that, but you have to respect Retro for adding little details like this. There's always some logical reason for their existence, except for with the barrels, but even then. Water stages don't exist, which is good depending on who you ask. I never understood the hate for water levels, but now they replaced them with the rocket barrel. It reminds me of that helicopter flash game everyone at school used to play, but a crap ton classier. I assume my viewers would be more familiar with Flappy Bird, a similar game. You control the rocket by pressing one button. By golly did I die most during these moments on my first ever playthrough. It sucks that you're killed in one hit. Once you've adapted to the controls, it's really easy. It's more pattern memorization if anything else. There's so many cool things that go on in the background, and they're good for a change of pace. I think the most memorable part that everyone can agree on is the final showdown against this giant bat. I died like a million times back in the day. Recently I beat him first try. I can't believe how much I struggled against this absolute unit. I think the reason is because previously everything was set in stone, so you could rely on muscle memory alone. But now there's a creature that shoots wherever you're at or near. You weren't used to this, nor had you mastered the controls by that time. The minecart sections are back and holy cow they're crazy. There are 6 minecart stages filled with so many cool moments. However, you die in one hit, which sucks the dick, and there are only 2 jump types. small and big. That takes some getting used to. I never understood why the rocket barrel and minecart sections only gave you 1 hit point. Now I think it's because they're very short. They're still incredibly fun though. What are my overall thoughts on the levels? They are, most of the time, awesome. There are so many memorable moments. With the technology of the Wii, they could do stuff that was impossible on the Super Nintendo. The best are Stormy Shore, where you get chased by a giant octopus throughout. This one is the first real standout. It was so good they showed it in the trailer. There's a level where you ride on this giant whale fighting crabs and dodging airborne squids. Eventually he ends up being the one destroying the platforms you jump on. Just to get sidetracked, this whole beach area reminds me of the one in Diddy Kong Racing. It even has a pirate theme. Squidicus reminds me of this boss, and there's even a giant whale too. Talking about the beach, Tidal Terror is another cool stage from there. You have to hide behind walls to protect you from the waves. They put crumbling and timed walls to really spice things up, and a bunch of arsehole crabs. The whole atmosphere of it is really cool. Mars Blast is another memorable one. You spend most of the time getting cannonballs fired at you by the pirate ships. It feels so satisfying when you destroy the final one. It seems I really like the virtual beach, but not the real life one. I hate sand, it's rough and irritating. Nah, it's more the sunburn. To all you arachnophobes out there, Muncher Marathon is for you. This one scared a lot of people back in the day and caused great anxiety. I think it was awesome. To be honest, I always thought the bouncy balls were oranges. They're actually spider eggs. The 3DS version does a better job of conveying this. Last of all, my favourite is Crumble Canyon. The pacing is really good and everything you step on just, well, crumbles and gets destroyed. There's all sorts of crap going on in the background. You then get chased by a great ball of fire and a mad dash to the end. I love how some connect. For example, at the end of Stormy Shore, well, a storm starts to brew. The next level has you playing in those conditions fully. When you go from the factory to the volcano, there's the building you just came from and a metal bridge connecting to a basalt floor, with some giant screws added for good measure. Areas tend to fit the same style throughout, unlike the originals, where there would sometimes be random levels that had nothing to do with the overall theme. There's always a unique gimmick to stop the game from feeling repetitive. Rocket barrel and minecart stages are used for a change of pace so things don't get monotonous. The only negative I can think of is that there are moments where you have to wait. That kind of stuff can really screw up the flow. I find it boring. The originals did it better in that regard. However, I think the level design is the best thing about this game. Your final challenge in an area is a boss fight. I remember reading some comments where people said the bosses weren't memorable or they sucked. I would highly disagree. There's been nothing like the Mole Train or Mango Ruby in the series. They're a lot of fun to figure out. They have different phases and attack patterns the longer you fight them, unlike in a Mario game. I don't understand how anyone can say they're bad. Aesthetically, however, some feel out of place in the series. Normally, they were just bigger versions of animals, but some of these look really Japanesey. Okay, I'm gonna spoil the final boss, so skip ahead by clicking the annotation below, if you want. Doesn't this remind you of Andros from Star Fox 64? It even has a similar trippy background. He's actually quite a lot of fun, and isn't even overly long, which is nice. Thematically, they play it safe. You have jungle, ruins, cave, forest, factory, and volcano, which have already been done previously. The exceptions being beach and cliff, well, the prehistoric parts of that anyway. Art style wise, I was very disappointed that they went with this cartoony look. The previous games had cartoon-like characters, but the backgrounds were more realistic. I think what everyone can agree with is that the Prime games had amazing art and just a ton of detail. I was expecting them to go more in that direction. That might be because key artist from Metroid left. However, looking closely, you start to notice a lot of tiny details. You're so focused on Donkey Kong that you miss out on a lot of cool little stuff. In the originals, they had to repeat the backgrounds because of memory limitations. Now there's barely anything repeated. I appreciate that, and I didn't notice it my first playthrough. I would have preferred the more realistic style of Rareware, but with the variety of background stuff from Retro. Don't get me wrong, there's still stuff that looks fantastic. Sunset Shore is the best looking Donkey Kong Country level ever. It holds up so well. Even the silhouette ones from Tropical Freeze don't look as good. Smoky Peak looks incredible too. It just has atmosphere oozing from it. I like the brightness of the beach and the cool looking heat waves in the background of some volcano stages. I respect the detail and the variety of others. I was expecting a lot more from Retro though. If it was just about any other company who had done this, I probably wouldn't have been as disappointed. Maybe limitations have something to do with it. I'm no programming nerd, but I assume 3D games are more technically demanding, so I don't see why they couldn't do realistic. Did any of you guys play Sonic Colors? Holy crap! I know it's still cartoony, but damn, it looks amazing. It really makes this game look outdated in comparison. The Kong letters in the originals were pretty pointless. All you got was one life, and most of the time they weren't worth the risk. As for this game, when you collect all the Kong letters for each stage in an area, you unlock a secret temple level. It's equivalent to the stages from the Lost World and Krematoa in Donkey Kong Country 2 and 3, as in they're really damn hard. The letters added extra replayability and challenge. I really like the way they did this. In the originals, you had to search for bonus barrels and complete a minigame. Some of them were a real pain in the ass to find. I know there's a cheat to bypass this, but most people would never know that. There's Cranky Kong's shop where you can buy lives and extra hit points. You buy this stuff with banana coins. Don't worry, they're everywhere. There will never be a shortage. I mean, if you can't complete the game with all that help, then I don't know what to say. There are puzzle pieces you can collect. They look a lot like the jiggies from Banjo-Kazooie. They're hidden all throughout. Sometimes you just have to collect some certain bananas or complete a hidden bonus stage. To make things easier, you can pay for squawks at Cranky's shop to help you find them. I had my fun collecting, but the reward sucks. All you get is concept art. Collecting them all is only worth doing once. You're not really missing out on much. Also, a lot of them seem to be right at the start of a level. Bit overkill in my opinion, but not the biggest deal. The bonus stages suck too. They seem pretty half-assed. When you complete the final secret stage, you get mirror mode. There's no Diddy, no assistance from Cranky's items, and you're killed in one hit. If you want to die a lot, then go ahead. The temple stages in particular are really tough. I found Blast and Bounce the hardest. I swear that my high tire bounces wouldn't work all the time. Not in the bunched up area, but when they're by themselves. Make sure you master the art of bouncing off enemies and tires higher, or else you're not in for a good time. I wish it was easy to pull off like in the original trilogy. However, it only becomes an absolute necessity in mirror mode anyway. I finally completed this mode after all these years. The first time I tried to complete all the normal levels, then the temple stages. Big mistake. Dying so many times really drains you. After completing a tough stage, the first thing you want to do is try what will probably be an even harder one. I found that interspersing it with normal levels made it a lot more bearable. It's all about the endurance. Like I said of Tropical Freeze, never again, but it's good for bragging rights' sake. If you thought mirror mode was hard, try getting gold medals in the time trial mode. Yikes. I saw some TAS runs, or TAS runs. S stands for Time Assisted Speedrun. It's where you use an emulator to slow down time and you have save states so you can do the levels at the most ridiculous speeds possible. They were only beaten some by 10 seconds with all the crazy stuff they were pulling off. It's for the real hardcore. Another thing about the DKC games are that they have the best music ever, usually by the legendary David Wise. This is done by Kenji Yamamoto and his crew. I say crew because there's a bunch of other people credited with the music. Yeah, it's pretty disappointing. It's mainly remixes of the first Donkey Kong Country game with some new music. It's good because the original music is good, but I would prefer something different. I like what they did with Metroid Prime, where it was mainly new music with a few remixes of ones from the older games. This is the opposite. I'm gonna say it, Kenji Yamamoto is in my top 10 favourite composers, but outside of Metroid, he's not that great. The only memorable piece of music that is original and not a remix is the Rocket Barrel theme. At least they got David back for Tropical Freeze. So I already went through the bad stuff in my Tropical Freeze review. I can't be asked repeating what I said there. Just watch that video instead. Returns holds up so well. I had a lot of fun. It brought back memories of the first time I played it and I enjoyed it just as much, if not more so. I highly recommend this. It controls well, it has plenty of variety, it nails the feel of the classics even if it doesn't have everything from it. To me, the Donkey Kong Country games are about 4 things. 1. Hop and bop level design. By that I mean the levels flow well and have great pacing. There isn't too much waiting. 2. Tight controls. Pretty self-explanatory. 3. One more try level design. It doesn't matter how many times you die, you always feel like, just one more try then I'll give up. But you never give up. 4. Charm. Like humour, great music and other small details. Retro nailed them all except for the charm. Rareware were the masters of it, so it can be an almost impossible task to imitate. Like, subscribe, I beg of you, I need the money to satisfy my cocaine addiction. I'll see you, my scholars.